After being belittled by the humble girl at the bookstore, the powerful CEO becomes angry at having been treated so ordinary. Determined to punish her, he hires her to work for him. But as they spend time together, the two end up discovering feelings that go far beyond what was expected. Stay until the end to follow every detail of this captivating story. And before you start, subscribe to the channel and leave your like so you don't miss the best drama stories. Han Jun-seo is a man many envy and fear at the same time. He is the CEO of HJ Group, one of Korea's largest corporations, known for his cold and unshakable demeanor. Despite being young and attractive, Jun-seo has no interest in forming personal relationships and keeps his distance from everyone around him. Growing up in a strict aristocratic family, he learned to believe that emotions and relationships are weaknesses, something he, as the future heir of an empire, could never allow himself. One ordinary day, Jun-seo receives news that one of the rare books in his personal collection has been damaged. This book was a gift from his late mother, one of the only emotional connections he has preserved. Searching for an identical replacement, Jun-seo heads to a small bookstore recommended by an acquaintance, where he believes he will find an exact edition. With a hardened heart and a serious expression, he strides confidently into the store, unaware that he is about to find something far more valuable than any rare book. In the modest, unassuming neighborhood bookstore, Yoon Ji-ae, a cheerful and hardworking young woman, organizes books and assists customers. She is a simple person who lives each day with humility and gratitude, always helping her mother and siblings, even if it means giving up on her own dreams. Ji-ae has no fear of expressing her opinions and is not intimidated by rich or powerful people. To her, character and kindness matter more than money. As soon as Jun-seo enters the bookstore, Ji-ae greets him politely. He, however, responds coldly and asks for the rare book without even looking at her. Not liking the arrogant attitude of the customer, Ji-ae remains calm but briefly critiques him in her mind, unaware that she will soon be vocal about it. "We have a rare book, but it hasn't been cataloged yet," Ji-ae says with a restrained smile as she tries to hide her irritation with the customer's attitude. She heads to the back of the store to look for the volume, leaving Jun-seo waiting in the main area. Jun-seo, impatient, checks his watch several times, and when Ji-ae finally returns with the book, he stares at her with an impatient expression. "Is that as fast as you can assist a customer?" he asks in a tone that reflects all of his impatience. Ji-ae's response is immediate and firm. "Look, sir, I'm doing my best, and usually a bit of patience and politeness helps a lot," she replies bluntly. Her words leave Jun-seo visibly surprised, as no one ever dares to confront him this way. He raises an eyebrow, annoyed by Ji-ae's attitude, yet at the same time, something within him feels an unexpected curiosity. "I'll pay whatever it costs," he retorts, almost challenging her. Ji-ae calmly responds, "It's not about money. There are things that can't be bought." She smiles, still composed. This attitude starts to bother Jun-seo in a different way. He is used to being served quickly and submissively, and this young woman seems completely oblivious to who he is. He decides he won't respond to her comment, trying to keep control of the situation, but is visibly unsettled. While he pays, Ji-ae remains professional, but her stance doesn't change. "You're not used to waiting, are you?" she comments, almost as a provocation. Jun-seo stares at her, surprised by her boldness. No one had ever spoken to him like this. As he leaves the bookstore, Jun-seo realizes that something about her has affected him in an unexpected way. He tries to ignore it, but as he walks back to his car, Ji-ae's face remains in his mind. He, the CEO of one of the country's largest companies, had been treated like any ordinary customer and even heard some inconvenient truths from a simple bookstore clerk. Unable to understand why, he feels irritated, and at the same time, fascinated. On the other hand, Ji-ae continues her work in the bookstore, forgetting about the arrogant customer she just attended to. To her, he is just another customer who thinks money buys everything. She mentions his behavior to a colleague, laughing about the situation. What she doesn't realize is that this encounter is only the beginning of a story that will completely change the course of her life. Jun-seo is used to quickly forgetting anything that bothers him, but this time it seems impossible. In the days following his encounter with Ji-ae, he finds himself repeatedly recalling every detail of their conversation in the bookstore. The way she treated him without deference, the raw honesty in her words, and the fact that she didn't even hesitate to respond to a customer she found rude. For a man used to absolute control, this situation is unsettling and new. Despite his reluctance to admit it, he feels a persistent curiosity to know more about this young woman. In a meeting with his marketing team, Junseo becomes distracted as he realizes that, although his subordinates follow every order, none of them ever questions his ideas. He reflects on his company's latest campaign proposal, which aims to make HJ Group's image more accessible to the general public. However, the strategies suggested so far sound artificial and distant, something Jun Seseo has become more intensely aware of since seeing GI's direct, unpretentious authenticity. He feels, inexplicably, that he needs her perspective to adjust the campaign. The next day, Junseo decides to visit the bookstore again, an impulsive decision even for him. When he enters, he sees GI busy arranging a shelf. She looks surprised to see him again, but tries to disguise her expression with a polite smile. "Looking for another rare book?" she asks, with a slight hint of irony but maintaining courtesy. "No," replies Junseo with his usual coldness. "Actually, I came here to make you a job offer." GI is stunned. "A job?" She frowns, suspicious. "I don't understand. I work here. You know that." He smiles slightly, almost imperceptibly. "I know that. But I'm looking for someone who has a more authentic view on the general public to help with a special project." GI looks at him, clearly confused. The idea of being hired to teach someone so powerful about something so basic seems surreal. She hesitates, wondering if he's serious, but when Junseo mentions the generous salary and a 1-month duration, her interest is piqued. With the promised money, GA could afford some medical treatments for her mother and also help cover other family expenses. "You're hiring me because you think I have no filter for what I say?" she asks, narrowing her eyes as she tries to understand his intentions. "I'm hiring you," he replies coolly, "because you seem to be able to see things authentically without worrying about appearances." GA ponders for a few seconds. "I guess I have nothing to lose," she finally says, extending her hand to seal the deal. Thus, the next day, GA begins her temporary job as Junseo's assistant, a position that makes her both uncomfortable and curious. She is met with surprised and suspicious glances at the HJ Group headquarters, as her simple and spontaneous style is completely out of place in the impeccably formal corporate environment. However, Junseo doesn't seem to mind his new assistant's appearance. He instructs GA to accompany him in meetings, review advertising campaigns, and evaluate projects targeting the general public. With each task, Junseo silently observes her reactions and opinions. During the first few days, GA struggles to adjust to the pace and environment, but that doesn't stop her from speaking openly when she disagrees with something. In a meeting to review a commercial promoting the company's friendliness with consumers, she points out what she considers to be over the top and fake. "Sorry, but this just seems forced. The audience you're trying to reach will see this and think it's all a facade," she comments, unaware that many of those present are staring at her in surprise. Junseo, unlike his colleagues, appears undisturbed and even intrigued by her comment. "Explain," he requests, his gaze focused on GI. She continues, a bit hesitant at first, but quickly finding confidence. "This company presents itself as something accessible but never really does anything to hear or understand ordinary people's needs. You're more interested in looking like than being." Her direct words leave everyone in the room in an awkward silence, except Junseo, who seems to be absorbing each one. The impact of her honest feedback goes beyond the campaign. It speaks to something deeper that Junseo begins to realize: a disconnection between his own life and the real world. Their work progresses, and meanwhile, the dynamic between GI and Junseo begins to change. Although he maintains his distant and cold stance, Junseo finds himself, unwillingly, admiring the natural and carefree way GA views the world. Although they come from such different realities, he notices that her presence makes him see things with a new perspective. With each spontaneous and sincere comment, Junseo starts questioning his own choices and the rigid values that have defined him for so long. By the end of the first week, Junseo starts seeing her not just as a temporary assistant, but as someone who manages to touch on points he had never considered. He watches as she interacts with other employees, always with the same warmth and accessibility. For the first time, he begins to notice the loneliness and rigidity in his own life, comparing it to Gi's lightheartedness. She doesn't possess material wealth, but she seems incredibly rich in soul and values. Gi, on the other hand, continues to see Junseo as a complex and reserved figure, but occasionally notices a certain glimmer of vulnerability in his eyes. She wonders what made him so cold and distant, and although she doesn't understand yet, she cannot deny that something inside her wants to discover what lies behind the mask he wears. In the final moments of that week, Jun Seo-ro, without realizing it, starts smiling to himself when he thinks about Jie. His initial curiosity has transformed into something deeper and almost imperceptible. And for Jie, this temporary position begins to stir a feeling of nervousness and excitement that she has never experienced before. As days pass, the relationship between Jun Seo-ro and Jie begins to evolve. What started as a simple temporary work agreement turns into a bond full of mutual discoveries. Jun Seo remains fascinated by Jie's unfiltered way of expressing herself and the raw honesty of her opinions. He watches her with growing curiosity, as if each day reveals a new facet of her he has yet to see. As much as he tries to maintain distance, he feels her presence affecting him in ways he hadn't expected. One day, as they're working late in Jun Seo's office, Jie notices that he looks more tired and somber than usual. She's tempted to ask what's bothering him, but hesitates, aware of the distance he always keeps. However, when he lets out a heavy sigh as if something is weighing him down, Jie can't hold back her curiosity. "Jeonseo, you never really seem happy," she remarks bluntly while organizing papers on his desk. "Is this work and all this rigidity really worth it?" Junseo looks at her, surprised, as if he never considered the possibility of someone asking him that question. He gives a slight smile, but it's empty, and his eyes show no sign of joy. "My life is what it needs to be. What I want doesn't matter. What matters is what the company, my family, and my investors expect." Jie stares at him with a look of mixed surprise and compassion. She sees the loneliness behind his words and feels an inexplicable wave of sadness. Although she doesn't fully understand the weight Junseo carries, she senses he lives imprisoned by expectations that were never his own. Ji, who has always followed her heart and her convictions, feels a desire to help Junseo see that living is more than meeting external demands. In the days that follow, that exchange lingers in both of their minds. Intrigued, Junseo begins to open up a little more. He shares details about his childhood, marked by the rigidity of his father, who always demanded he be the best. From a young age, Junseo understood that his worth lay in meeting his family's expectations, and this mentality shaped every aspect of his life. He remembers his mother, the only one who made him feel accepted as he was. When she passed away, he isolated himself even more, seeing vulnerability as a weakness to be avoided at all costs. One night, after a long day of exhausting meetings, Junseo and Ji leave the office together. Ji, always ready to find joy in small things, invites him to a small street restaurant where she often goes for dinner after work. He hesitates at first, but ends up accepting, curious to experience something so simple yet so far removed from his life. At the restaurant, Junseo seems out of place, trying to adjust to the modest and laid-back environment. But Ji encourages him to relax, showing him that there's no need to be so formal. Between conversations, she convinces him to try a simple, typical dish. Initially reluctant, Junseo is eventually surprised by the taste and simplicity of the food. It's a unique experience for him, accustomed only to high-end restaurants and expensive dishes. And this contrast makes him reflect on everything he's missing in life. Throughout the night, Junseo shares some of his frustrations and admits that, despite all his success, he often feels empty. It's a rare moment of vulnerability, and Ji realizes that there's much more to him than the cold, calculating CEO everyone knows. For the first time, Junseo allows someone to see the pain and loneliness he hides. Moved, Ji gently takes his hand. "Have you ever thought that maybe you could do something that actually makes you happy? That you don't always have to live up to what everyone else expects?" Junseo looks at her, shocked by her touch and the idea. No one had ever encouraged him to think that way. He feels his heart race, confused and surprised by the intensity of the moment. For the first time, he wonders if it's possible to live a life without being a prisoner to his family's and society's expectations. But before he can answer, he pulls away, clearly uncomfortable with the closeness they shared. In the following days, the time they spend together becomes even more intense. Junseo catches himself admiring Ji-ae's simplicity and detachment. She makes him laugh, something rare for him, and makes him question his cold, rigid life. On the other hand, Ji-ae starts realizing she is developing deep feelings for him, but tries to push them away, knowing how different their worlds are. One night when both end up staying late at the office again, Junseo invites Ji-ae for a drink. With a bit of alcohol to ease the tension, he feels more at ease, and unintentionally reveals a painful secret. The reason he doesn't allow himself to feel anything or get involved with anyone. Years ago, he was engaged to a young woman from high society, chosen by his family. The relationship was planned and strategic, but he allowed himself to feel something for her. However, when the marriage was called off for business reasons and she abandoned him without looking back, Junseo learned to see love as a weakness he never wanted to experience again. Ji-ae listens in silence, with tears welling up, feeling his pain as if it were her own. She gently touches his face, almost on impulse. "You deserve more than this, Junseo. No one deserves to live with a closed heart like this." Surprisingly, he doesn't pull away. Instead, he feels a peace he's never experienced before. They remain like that for a few moments, in a silence that says more than words. Deep down, both realize they are on the verge of crossing a line that will change everything. From that moment, Ji-ae's feelings intensify, and she constantly finds herself torn between the growing desire to be close to him and the awareness that their worlds are irreconcilable. Junseo, in turn, begins to wonder if he could ever open himself up to true love again. The idea terrifies and fascinates him at the same time, but he is still not ready to face the complexity of his feelings. The relationship between Junseo and Ji-ae deepens, even though they both try to hide their feelings. More and more, Junseo allows Ji-ae to see his vulnerabilities, revealing parts of his life he had never shared with anyone. They become closer than he ever imagined possible, and Ji-ae becomes a part of his daily routine in a way he can no longer ignore. However, the more Junseo opens up, the more he becomes aware of the barriers that surround this relationship. One weekend, Junseo decides to take Ji-ae out of the city on an outing to escape work and family pressures. They stroll in a quiet, secluded park where Ji-ae enjoys the chance to relax, admiring the flowers, the breeze, and the view without any worries. Junseo watches her pure joy and for a moment feels he's found a new purpose in life, one that goes beyond his company or family interests. However, at the end of their outing, they encounter reporters who, spotting Junseo, start taking pictures and asking questions. Even as he tries to protect Ji-ae, he can't prevent the situation from spiraling out of control. The next day, several magazines publish photos of them together, and speculation about the mysterious girlfriend of the CEO takes over social media. Junseo's family quickly finds out about the affair and demands an explanation. His father, a strict and traditional man, summons him to a private meeting where he expresses his dissatisfaction and insists that Junseo end any relationship that could jeopardize the family's reputation. For the first time, Junseo finds himself unable to obey without question. He tries to argue, but his father cuts off any attempt at defense, making it clear that a relationship with someone of a lower class will never be acceptable. "She'll pull you away from your purpose, Junseo," his father says coldly. "You're not here to fall in love. You're here to carry on the legacy of our family." This confrontation shakes Junseo deeply. He feels torn between the blossoming feelings he has for Ji-ae and the rigid demands of his family. He tries to ignore his father's words, but the pressure continues, and his family begins to interfere directly in his personal life. In addition, coworkers start making comments and giving Ji-ae disapproving looks, suggesting that she's just a gold digger who wants to take advantage of Junseo. Ji-ae notices these changes and begins to feel the weight of the situation. Even without him saying it, she understands that she's harming Junseo's image and fears being seen as an obstacle to his career and his circle. She tries to hide her anguish, but sadness and insecurity become inevitable. One afternoon, during lunch with colleagues, she overhears a few employees speaking sarcastically about her, calling her the girl who managed to catch the CEO, and insinuating that common people always find a way to climb up in life. These words hurt Jie more than she would like to admit, leading her to question her place in Jun Seo's life. She has always been an independent and resolute person, but the weight of outside judgment and the differences between them start to affect her self-esteem. Every day, Ji feels more out of place, as if she's an intruder in a world that will never accept her. Junseo tries to reassure her, saying he doesn't care about others' opinions, but Ji sees the silent struggle he wages against his own family and colleagues. She realizes how divided he is, and despite trying to disguise it, the concern for his reputation pains her. She doesn't want to be the cause of his conflicts and doubts, but she can't deny what she feels. To complicate matters further, an ex-girlfriend of Jun Seo's, Min Ji-won, returns to town. Ji-won is the daughter of one of Korea's wealthiest and most influential families and was once introduced to Jun Seo's family as the ideal match years ago when they briefly dated. Ji-won has always had a thing for him, and seeing the closeness between Jun Seo and Ji, she decides to try to win him back. At a business dinner that Ji isn't invited to, Ji-won approaches Jun Seo and suggests that they should resume their old relationship. Determined, Ji-won doesn't hesitate to create situations where Jun Seo is forced to spend more time with her, whether at social events or business meetings. Ji, finding herself excluded from these events, feels even more displaced and vulnerable. In a moment of vulnerability, she confronts Jun Seo, asking him if he truly believes there's a future for them. "Why did you hire me? Why did you get close to me if all I bring is trouble for you?" Ji asks, her voice tinged with sadness. "I see how the people around you look at me, how your family sees me. I don't belong in this world, Jun Seo. Maybe it's better if I leave your life before it's too late." Jun Seo holds her hands firmly, his eyes showing frustration and fear of losing her. "You're wrong. I don't care what others think," he says firmly. "The only thing that matters to me is that you're here. You changed my life in ways I never imagined." But Ji can't ignore her own fears and insecurities. She's deeply in love, but also very aware of the difficulties. "I love you, Junseo," she admits, her eyes brimming with tears. "But loving someone isn't enough to overcome all these differences. I don't want to see you lose everything because of me." Even after this intense conversation, the conflicts don't lessen. The pressure from his family and company continues to weigh on Junseo, and the situation with Ji becomes unsustainable. However, he is determined to fight against everything and everyone to keep Ji by his side, even if it means giving up certain privileges and risking his reputation. The thought of losing Ji is unbearable to him. While Jun Seo plans a way to face everyone, Ji begins preparing to say goodbye, believing it will be the best solution for both. She has already made her decision, but hasn't told him, waiting for the right moment to leave, even if it means breaking her own heart. With the pressure from society and his family reaching unbearable levels, Ji realizes that her presence is causing Jun Seo more pain than either of them can handle. The constant demands from Jun Seo's parents, his colleagues' hurtful remarks, and Ji-won's growing hostility are all too much for her to ignore. Additionally, Ji becomes increasingly convinced that, by staying involved with Jun Seo, she will only pull him away from the world he knows and the ties he is expected to maintain. After countless sleepless nights and hidden tears, Ji makes the most difficult decision of her life. She needs to leave. She doesn't want Jun Seo to see her leave, so she decides to say goodbye in a letter. On a rainy morning, she goes to the office at dawn and leaves a small box on his desk containing a simple ring and a goodbye letter. In it, Ji reveals all she feels, but also explains why she believes it's best to part ways. "Jun Seo, I never knew what it was to truly love someone until I met you. You showed me feelings and emotions I didn't even know I could feel, and for that, I thank you. But the truth is, I am a burden in your life. I know how much your family and your world expect from you, and I could never offer what they consider worthy. I'm leaving with a broken heart, but knowing that this is the right choice for both of us. Goodbye." Reading the letter, Jun Seo feels as though his heart is being crushed. The pain is so intense that he struggles to process her departure, and his anger mounts as he realizes that everyone around him, directly or indirectly, drove her away from him. He replays memories of every moment they shared, every conversation, every smile, all of which now feel empty and distant. He spends the entire night awake, desperately trying to think of a way to bring her back. But deep down, he knows GIA made this decision to protect him from a path she believes he shouldn't have to walk. In the days that follow, Junseo becomes a shadow of himself. He can barely focus on work and avoids the events and social obligations he once attended without question. His colleagues notice his change, but he remains closed off and bitter. His family tries to convince him that it was for the best, but he responds with a deadly silence that even worries his father. For Gi, the separation is also unbearable. Although she tries to return to her routine, the emptiness left by Junseo's absence is always present. She visits places where they spent time together, looks over the mementos she kept from him, and cries alone every night. Gia tries to convince herself that she did the right thing, but deep down, all she wants is to turn back time. With Junseo, she felt, for the first time, that true love was possible, but she also knows that staying in his life would require too many sacrifices for them both. Unable to bear the pain of their separation any longer, Junseo makes a drastic decision. He decides to confront his family and give up everything necessary to be with Gia. In a meeting with his father, he finally reveals the depth of his love for her and his desire to live according to his own feelings, regardless of the approval or privileges he has always known. "I'm done living by other people's dreams and expectations," he says, looking his father firmly in the eye. "You raised me to be someone cold and emotionless, but I can't live like that anymore. If I have to choose between your approval and true love, I choose love. I would rather give up all of this wealth than lose the woman I love." These words shock everyone, especially his father, who finds himself facing a dilemma he never anticipated. He tries to convince Junseo that this choice is a mistake and that GA is just a phase. But Junseo remains firm. He is determined to find GA and let her know that his love for her is more important than any inheritance, position, or status. With the support of a few close friends who understand his true feelings, Junseo finally finds the place where GA is staying. He appears in front of the small bookstore where she has returned to work, determined to prove to her that no matter the opposition or hardships, he has chosen their love above all. When he walks in, his eyes find her immediately, and a hush falls over the room. Gi, surprised and confused, stands still, not knowing how to react. "Why did you come, Junseo?" she asks, her voice barely a whisper, fearing that the confrontation she wanted to avoid is finally upon her. "Why did you come, Junseo?" she asks, her voice barely a whisper, fearing that the confrontation she wanted to avoid is finally upon her. "I came because I realized my life means nothing without you," he responds with conviction. "You taught me to feel something I didn't even know I was capable of. Ga. I spent so much time living in an empty world where appearances and business mattered most. But you showed me that love is real, and I can't live without it." Ga tries to protest, saying she doesn't want him to sacrifice everything for her. "It's not fair for you to give up your life because of me, Junseo. I can't be the reason for all these problems between you and your family." He smiles, holding her hand tenderly. "I'm not giving up anything. I'm gaining the life I've always wanted but never had the courage to pursue. If I have to face my family, then so be it. But I need you to know that even if everything around us is against us, I won't let you go." Despite her fears and uncertainties, Ga finally realizes that the love she feels for Junseo is stronger than any barrier. She allows herself to believe for a moment that together they can overcome the challenges. Hearing the sincerity in his words, she feels her pain and resentment fade, replaced by hope. They embrace, finally accepting that their love is worth more than all the differences and obstacles. From that moment on, Junseo starts the process of restructuring his life. He rejects arranged marriage proposals and makes it clear to his family that he has chosen Gi. Although his relatives still resist, he stands firm in his decision. Alongside Gi, he learns to balance his life and responsibilities without ever compromising who he truly is. Gi, on the other hand, begins to trust more in herself and in Junseo's love, realizing that, despite their differences, the bond they share is stronger than any external pressure. They discover that, despite all the difficulties, true love is capable of transcending barriers and bringing peace to their lives. After confronting his family and declaring his love for Gi, Junseo is determined to build a new life by her side. even if it means facing the high society's disdain and giving up the privileges he has always known. He begins implementing changes in his routine and in his business, striving to balance his family's traditions with his new vision for life. By his side, GA also tries to adapt, but the differences between their worlds still bring insecurities and fears that they must both face. Their relationship is tested several times, especially under the constant pressure from Junseo's family and the disapproval of high society. His father, who has never accepted his decision, insists on private meetings, attempting to convince him that this relationship is a phase that will soon pass. In one of these conversations, Junseo's father gives him a final ultimatum. Either you end this relationship and get back on the right track, or you'll be disinherited and lose everything you've worked for. Junseo, who had spent his life believing that his family's respect was the most important thing, realizes that, by GA's side, he has found a new meaning in life that their approval could never provide. Junseo responds to the ultimatum with firmness, making it clear that his love for GI is non-negotiable. He declares that he is willing to start from scratch, if necessary, as long as he has the woman he loves by his side. This break with his family has a profound impact on Junseo, but it also represents a liberation. For the first time, he feels free to live according to his own desires. The bond between Junseo and GI grows stronger as they face the challenges together. Despite the difficulties, Junseo is able to keep part of the company, restructuring his projects so that HJ Group aligns more closely with the needs of the general public, a dream he and GI had shared from the beginning. He decides to launch a new campaign, presenting a more humanized and accessible version of the company, organizing community-oriented events and programs, inspiring employees and clients alike to see the company more authentically. GI, with her simplicity and authenticity, becomes essential in this new phase. She supports him in every decision, helping the team understand the needs of the public and working alongside him to bring his vision to life. GA's impact on Junseo's life and the company's environment is undeniable, and gradually, even the most skeptical employees come to see her as a true partner. The connection between the two only grows, and Junseo realizes that each day with GI makes him feel more fulfilled and complete. To celebrate this new chapter, he decides to surprise her with a proposal that is simple, yet full of meaning. On a special night, Junseo takes her to the park where they had their first outing together, a place that has become dear to both of them. He has prepared a small, intimate ceremony with only a few close friends under the soft glow of lanterns. Upon arriving, GIA is amazed by the beauty of the scene. Junseo holds her hands, looking into her eyes with deep intensity. "GA, you changed my life in a way I never imagined possible," he begins, his voice filled with emotion. "I spent my whole life afraid of feeling something this real, but by your side, I learned what true love is. I want to spend the rest of my life with you, facing whatever comes, as long as we're together. Will you marry me?" With tears in her eyes and a radiant smile, GA gives an emotional yes as they embrace, sealing the commitment they both longed for. The love they share represents a new beginning, and they decide that, together, they are ready to face any obstacle. After the wedding, Junseo and GA build a life that reflects the values and true love they have learned to cultivate. Junseo finally finds the peace and happiness he had always sought, not as an untouchable, powerful CEO, but as a man who lives by what he believes in. With GA's support, he transforms HJ Group into a company focused on the well-being of everyone, fully breaking away from his family's elitist demands. GA, for her part, realizes that, despite their differences, she belongs to the world they created together. By Junseo's side, she finds the love and respect she always sought, without ever losing her sense of self. Their mutual support, understanding, and love make them a true team, overcoming all difficulties. Over the years, Junseo and GI build a family and live a life of simplicity and happiness. They become an inspiration to others, proving that true love can transcend any barrier and that, when two people find and accept each other as they really are, they can create a world where anything is possible. Junseo and GI's story ends with a powerful lesson about the value of love, courage, and authenticity. They remain united, not only by the feelings that brought them together, but by the commitment to live a life that represents their deepest values. This story showed that true love can overcome any barrier. If you are a fan of intense and emotional stories like this one, Leave a like and subscribe to the channel to keep up with the next transformative dramas that are coming. We want to know what you thought of the ending. Would you have made the same choice as them? Comment below and share your opinion with other drama fans. And don't forget to explore our other videos. We have more powerful love stories waiting for you. Until next time.